Jersey Marine Conservation, and I'm joined by my friends BCD and Tamara, and together we're going to look at some of the fascinating creatures that we find in our rock pools and on our rocky reefs. You're going to have a lot of fun with this task, and it's one of the things that you need to complete if you'd like to be awarded with your Marine Conservation Workshop Certificate, generously provided by Butterfield Bank. If you look carefully while you're on the beach, on the boulders and the rocks, particularly around rock pools, you'll see a lot of what looks like shells attached to the rocks. Some of them are in fact part of the shell, or what we call scientifically mollusk family. But then we've also got barnacles, which unbelievably are crustaceans. In other words, they belong to the crab family. They're much smaller and a little bit more difficult to spot. So what we're going to look at now, to begin with, is limpets and what they do and how we can make them. When you venture into the rock pools, the tide has gone out. And when you touch a limpet, you find that it's quite firmly secured to the rock that it's on. And that's how it survives when the tide goes out and the temperatures rise, and of course there is no sea water. Don't be deceived. The limpet might look like it's a very docile creature, but in fact it's very, very well equipped to fight off animals that want to feed on it, such as starfish. The limpet can very cleverly detect that the tide is on its way out. It's time for it to make its way back to the hollow that it's carved out in the rock. It follows the sticky trail, and that sticky trail, as well as guiding it safely home, contains all sorts of little creatures that have got caught in it. So it's a very nice added snack on the limpet's way back to its safe resting place. In areas where limpets have lived for a period of time, you'll see round holes which are ground into the rock, and that's where the limpets go when the tide is out. You can make the limpets of different sizes, and what you'll then be able to do is to add them to your model of your rock pool or your rocky reef, which is one of the other tasks for the Jersey Marine Conservation Certificate. You can see now a list of the items that you're going to actually need to make your model of the limpet. But don't worry if you can't find new cardboard or new paper. You can actually use magazines and cardboard that's been used before. So it's a good opportunity perhaps to recycle some of those items which were going to go into the bin and just get wasted. So here we are, and our first task is to mark a cross in the middle of our card or paper, and we're going to use that to help us draw the circle. Now if you're lucky enough to have a pair of compasses, that might make your task easier, and it's also a good opportunity to practice one of those skills which in maths are useful for drawing and designing things. So what I've done first of all is I've drawn a circle which is a little bit smaller than the paper, and that's all ready now for the next stage, which is to cut it out and to form the limpet shell. So let's just look at that one more time. I've marked my cross in the middle of my card or paper, and I'm setting my compasses to a circle which is a little bit smaller than the size of the paper. So there I go, and it can be a little bit tricky to use compasses, so don't worry if you don't get the hang of it straight away. If you've not got a compass, use a cup or anything that's circular to actually make the shape, but don't forget to mark it in the middle. So my next task is to cut out the card following round the circle, but again don't worry if it's a little bit jagged. That's not the end of the world, and in fact the real limpets are not perfect circles anyway. So I've drawn my circles and I've cut them out, and what you can see now is I'm marking a line from the middle of the circle to the outside, and I'm going to mark another one which is about a third of the way around the circle, and that's the bit that I'm going to cut out. Now I'm using a ruler, but you can use any straight edge to do that, so don't worry if you don't have some of these items. And you might notice also that I've got some paper underneath me so that while I'm drawing, I'm not going to accidentally draw on the tabletop or on your mom's best tablecloth. I'm using scissors with blunt ends, and if you haven't got scissors like that, please do be very careful, and when you are using cutting instruments, do make sure that whoever's looking after you knows you're doing that and can keep an eye on you. So with the piece cut out, I've now just simply folded it all the way around and overlapped it slightly. And what I can now do is I can either glue or staple or sellotape those two pieces together. So I'm holding them there, ready to actually fix it. So I've got glue, or I've got a stapler, or I've got a sellotape. So hold it carefully, and if you need to, get somebody to help you. But all you're going to simply do now is to secure those two ends to each other so that they stay where they are. Now the next bit is completely your choice. You can either decorate it similar to how a limpet really looks, with all of its lines going down from the top, or you can use your own imagination. You can colour it in, put some words on it, what it is, and it's really up to you how you would like your limpet to look, ready to go onto your model. Having made your limpet, what we're going to do now is we're going to adapt that design into the other creature that we're looking at today, which is the barnacle. And you can see in the picture that the barnacle is quite small. In this case, it's attached to a fisherman's weight that has sat on the seabed for several months, and all of the barnacles have grown all over it. And that's what we're going to make next. Look carefully and you'll see that the difference is that the barnacle has a big hole in the top of it. It looks like a volcano. And in fact, one of the barnacles is actually called a volcano barnacle, because that's exactly what it looks like. Now barnacles are a little bit different to limpets. They don't drill holes in the rock, but they just make an amazingly strong glue, which they use to attach themselves to the rocks when the tide is out. And if you were able to watch the barnacle once the tide has come in, you'll see that it's sent out lots of little tentacles that are grabbing all the food particles that are in the water as the tide is washing in and out. Once the tide starts to go out, the barnacle withdraws these tentacles and puts a safe covering over its opening to protect it from the high temperatures and the lack of seawater. Okay, so the same as last time, we're going to start off by drawing our circle with our compasses or our round object. And you'll notice that this time, as well as the circle on the outside, I'm drawing a circle inside as well. Now I started off and suddenly realized that that circle was going to be too big. So I've made my compasses much smaller, to about 2 centimeters from the point to the pencil, and I've marked that circle. And this time, rather than wait until I've cut the circles out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mark the sector that I'm going to cut out before I cut it all out. That saves a little bit of time and just really makes it a bit easier to cut it all out. So here we are, ready to start cutting the circles out, and first task will be to cut the big circle out with our scissors, and then having done that, cut the next circle out as well. And there's a little bit of a trick to that. So having cut my big circle out, what I'm then going to do to make it easier to cut the inner circle out is I'm actually going to cut along those 2 lines, which is now, as you can see, why I said to draw the lines before you cut the circles out, because it does make it easier to actually do that. So here I am, I've got my circle all cut out, ready, just completing the final stages. And you see also there's quite a lot of card left over, and we can look at ways of using up that card and not having to just put it straight into the bin. So now I'm cutting out a little sector, the 1/3 part of my circle, ready to form the barnacle. If you didn't have a set of compasses and all you had was a circular object, then you've had to guess where the middle of the circle is. It doesn't really matter too much because barnacles are not perfectly circular. They don't make a perfect cone. So if yours isn't exactly symmetrical, well, it's not the end of the world. And here we are cutting out the inner circle so that we're going to remove all that part of it. And there we are. We've got it all ready now to actually form the barnacle. So again, get the two ends and we fold them together. We have our stapler or our sellotape and we literally just join them together so they sit like that. And there is the barnacle all ready to add to our rocky reef or rock pool model. So we've got a barnacle, we've got a limpet, and we can make a few of these. We can make smaller ones, bigger ones if we've got some larger bits of paper or cardboard, and we can form quite a collection, and we can do all sorts of amazing designs on those, which are completely down to you to choose. Now if you look carefully, you'll see that I've actually used another barnacle model and I've turned it the other way up, and I've drawn the little tentacles which come out of the barnacle when it's feeding.